The facts matter.
The House Freedom Caucus, Republican Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona helped plan the January 6th event that culminated in a storming of the Capitol. That's according to Ali Alexander, a lead organizer of the gathering. Alexander, a pro-Trump personality, was an early founder of the Stop the Steal movement.
We gotta save the Republic, right?
And helped bring together various right-wing factions around a mass event on January 6th. It was aimed to coincide with objections to the counting of the Electoral College. Alexander made his claim in 3 separate live streams in late December, adding that Representatives Paul Gosar of Arizona and Mo Brooks of Alabama were also involved.
I was the person who came up with the January 6th idea. And I'm the guy who came up with the idea of January 6th when I was talking with Congressman Gosar, Congressman Andy Biggs, and Congressman Mo Brooks. So we're working with members of Congress while other people are trying to showboat. We're really working hard because, look, I believe that the president should do something brave. I think that the vice president should do something brave. I believe that that's how we maintain the White House, and I believe that we need to maintain the White House. I think it's a moral imperative.
His claim is buttressed by another video from a December 19th rally at the Arizona State Capitol, at which Alexander played a video that Biggs had supplied.
Congressman Gosar has been the spirit animal of this movement. One of the other heroes has been Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman Andy Biggs sent us a video.
Congressman Andy Biggs here. I wish I could be with you today. I pledge to you that I'm going to keep fighting for President Trump. And when it comes to January 6th, I'll be right down there in the well of the House with my friend from Alabama, Mo Brooks.
In the video, Biggs mentions Brooks as his ally in the fight. Gosar spoke in person at the event.
Freedom isn't cheap, folks. Freedom isn't cheap. But you know what? Imagine this, that you get to go back home once we conquer the Hill. Donald Trump has returned to being president. And amazing things will happen in 4 more years.
Organized last week's rally that turned into a deadly insurrection. Drew Griffin is with us now. And Drew, you know, you've done a lot of reporting on Ali Alexander and what he's done and the Stop the Steal movement. Obviously, you saw a lot of it in Georgia. And he is saying now that he had help from multiple Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, this guy's a bragger. He's made a business out of this whole Stop the Steal business, but his bragging online could have 3 congressmen in pretty big trouble. Aaron, remember, the Department of Justice says not only is it investigating what happened inside the Capitol, but the conspirators and instigators who may have started this whole thing. And according to Ali Alexander, which you're about to hear in his own words, these 3 congressmen were in on it all along. Take a listen.
I'm the guy who came up with the idea of January 6th when I was talking with Congressman Gosar, Congressman Andy Biggs, and Congressman Mo Brooks. It was to build momentum and pressure, and then on the day change hearts and minds of Congress peoples who weren't yet decided or saw everyone outside and said, I can't be on the other side of that mob.
Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona is running away from those comments. He is, through his staff, saying he never even remembers meeting Ali Alexander, even though he did send a taped message to one of Ali Alexander's Stop the Steal rallies. Mo Brooks of Alabama, facing a lot of heat at home and possible censure, is now saying that his words at that rally about going down to the Capitol and kicking ass were somehow taken out of context. Paul Gosar, also of Arizona, he won't say anything to us, but he has just got a string of tweets that show in the weeks after the election and leading up to January 6th, he appears to be in constant touch with Ali Alexander at rallies and talking about joining him for the January 6th. So I think all of this will be investigated at least by the House Ethics Committee, if not by the Department of Justice itself. Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, obviously incredibly serious allegations here. Drew Griffin, thank you very much. All right, back with me. Let me go straight to former Congressman Charlie Dent. Charlie, you heard Ali Alexander, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Mel Brooks, proof that they interacted with Ali Alexander, certainly in the case of Mr. Gosar. and the others, it seems it's going to be hard for them to say it didn't happen. What do you make of that?
Well, it seems to me those three members of Congress are going to need to lawyer up very fast. They will likely have, be interviewed by Department of Justice officials or the FBI. It's already been mentioned. I was a former chair of the Ethics Committee. No doubt that they will be investigated by the Ethics Committee, and they could be sanctioned for bringing discredit upon the House and various other charges. I think they're going to be under tremendous pressure to resign, quite frankly. I think that's where this is going, because if they in any way, were part of a conspiracy to assist this mob that really attempted to undermine the constitutional order and disrupt the peaceful transfer of power, this is a mortal crime against the republic that has been committed, and I think these members are probably real anxious right now.
I mean, it is incredible when you see this, and certainly the words of Mel Brooks, which it is stunning to hear him say they were taken out of context. You can look at all the context you want around what he said. He said what he said. Nia, this comes as President Trump himself. We're seeing this fight right now of what are they more afraid of, anti-Trumpism or Trumpism, right, on Capitol Hill for Republicans today. And yet Trump himself has been the emperor has no clothes, I guess would be the polite way of saying it, right? And he has become untouchable for so many, completely untouchable. I mean, even here in New York, right, they're trying to strip all the business contracts. He's lost his PGA contract. Sources saying that he may be about to declare bankruptcy when all of this is done.
That's right. And you saw his involvement in Georgia completely backfire against Republicans. This is one of the reasons Mitch McConnell is done with him, because he cost the Mitch McConnell his leadership position in the Senate. But yet and still, you have folks, particularly in the House, who do see that he is still a very powerful person in the Republican Party in the country, that he does have millions and millions of followers who he has brainwashed. And we should also note that these are primarily white men who we saw march on the Capitol there. They are disgruntled and afraid of a kind of new America where there are people who are black and brown who are increasingly showing not only sort of demographic shifts, but also just power at the ballot as well. And so I do think if this were a different kind of group of people, if they were black, if they were brown, if they were from a foreign country, everyone would be having a different conversation. Certainly Republicans would be. If you can imagine that those people were, a group of black men, I am sure those Republicans would be talking about black culture. Where is Obama? Where are the black leaders? What about the absent black fathers? But here, sort of the culture and the whiteness of these protesters is completely invisible in much of the conversation that we're having. And we also know that white supremacists and white nationalism is the big domestic terror threat that this country faces. So these folks can talk about process here. They can sort of ignore this larger threat that is looming that they saw. But at some point, they're going to have to really get down to business, certainly in this incoming Biden administration, this idea of how do you go after right-wing terrorists, but also sort of not alienate much of the country.
So, David, in the context of what we're hearing, Drew's reporting on Ali Alexander and Representatives Gosar Biggs and Brooks, we also have Marjorie Taylor Greene saying President Trump will remain in office. And you have Jim Jordan, right, who just said that Liz Cheney needs to be removed from her leadership position. This is an incredible thing, right? This is not saying I'm afraid that my family may be targeted if I stand up for the truth, right? Which one could debate the level of cowardice that implies or not. This is very different. This is, as you said earlier, taking what the president said literally and fighting to the death for him.
Well, that's exactly right. And there's another level to it. And I'm very interested in everything that Nia just said, because it's so important. We've also seen this before. In the 90s, I covered the trial of Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, and from whence he sprang, which was this anti-government, militia-based right-wing extremism that was primarily, geared toward the federal government, was anti the Brady bill for any gun restrictions, saw a tyrannical government, a lot of the same symbols that you saw in the mob insurrection last week. The Republican Party has to decide what it wants to be. And it has to stop saying, oh, well, those protesters, that mob, they weren't Republicans. Well, here's the reality is they love Trump. And why do they love Trump? Because Trump spoke to them, he played footsie with them, he sent them signals, he wouldn't denounce them. That's the fact, that a presidency built on nursing grievances among those white men who cannot handle a loss of power or the changing of America, he courted that group and agreed with them about immigration and brown people coming across the border that he warned about, and that Mexicans are rapists, and on and on and on, all of that vitriol. So now there is a choice for Republicans. Mature leaders, experienced leaders, real leaders who will do something that's unpopular because it's right, like a Liz Cheney and a Mitt Romney, have to find common cause with other conservatives who want to rebuild that party and leave behind what is a populist extremist wing that has been led by Donald Trump. And that's what propelled him.
Right. And, you see people like that. Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Jeff Duncan, has said, looking for that GOP 2.0. There are those people around the country, but they are not the loudest voices. They are not. And they are not the majority of the Republican Party on Capitol Hill from the vote we're going to see today. Jamie, you have some new reporting on that.
So just to David's point, a Republican source said to me that what we're seeing is the split of the Republican Party. Let's see who wins. The source said that this is someone who's familiar with Mitch McConnell and the reporting we've been getting for the last 24 hours, that he is in favor of impeachment. The source said, unlike Kevin McCarthy, who's on the House side, Mitch McConnell doesn't think Trump will just fade away. He thinks the party needs to make a clean break to save itself. And to the point about process, I also heard from another Republican who was pushing back on Republican House members saying this is going too fast. And this member said to me that saying it's rushed is, quote, a lame excuse. This is not about process. We know what happened. We were there. We saw it. We were the targets of it.
Lauren Boebert launched her political career recently with a real knack for drawing attention to herself, and she has a ton of it today. The Republican from Rifle went viral on social media due to calls for her resignation for stoking insurrectionist rhetoric before the attempted coup at the U.S. Capitol, and then for tweeting about the whereabouts of Speaker Nancy Pelosi during the siege. Boebert stoked this election rigging fantasy, and on the day of the insurrection in Washington, she told her followers that that day was 1776. As insurrectionists stormed the Capitol, Boebert tweeted that House members were locked in their chambers, then tweeted that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, third in line of the presidency, that she had been removed from the chambers. Now, bear in mind, evidence only kind of emerged after the fact that this crowd was shouting to hang Vice President Mike Pence. They appeared ready to take hostages inside the building. Now, as that has come out, now Boebert's tweets are getting fresh attention. There are people claiming that Boebert put Speaker Pelosi in danger. Boebert was hardly the only person who was providing live play-by-play of that insurrection from their viewpoint inside the Capitol. Boebert's team has not responded to my questions about whether the FBI has reached out to her about her actions or her social media posts. Boebert released a rambling stream of consciousness statement late this afternoon saying that she did nothing wrong and blaming Democrats for political violence in America, specifically pointing to Madonna, Johnny Depp, and Robert De Niro.